Then they would torture them some more, pull them out, and be like, do you want to step on it now? And a lot of them would say yes. And so it's crazy because it's not just will you say no one time to not stepping on it. It's like, will you say no, get persecuted, destroyed for it, and still say no? And so much of Christian culture, maybe even for Kanye, is we're like, Jesus is king. And then you get the backlash of it, and you're like, okay, no, you're right, I need to make some money. Or I got to revert back to what I used to do because it was better for me. It was a more comfortable way of living. I wasn't getting tortured back then. And even if it's like you in school or in work, it's like sometimes we conform to the swearing or the same culture, the same talk as everyone else in the office because we aren't being tortured, because we aren't being persecuted for believing in
a tortured
Jesus.
Poet.
But yes. But yeah.
I think this will be my last little blip before we close out, but I think that's why Christians in foreign countries where they're getting persecuted and they're getting so much hate and torture for being a Christian, that's why in those countries it grows the most. For example, like China, they have like 1 million new Christians each day, dude, or each month, and they're not even allowed to practice Christianity out loud or on the streets. They have to go into underground churches and they have to hide, but yet they thrive the most because I think like
there's no hot or cold.
It's not lukewarm. It's either you're with God or you're against God, and when you know that God is real and the Holy Spirit is real and He's moving and active in your life, is like, this is a real thing, and I'd rather die for the real thing than live with the fake. And I hope you're catching my drift when I say in Dune 2, they say they're talking about persecuting. I have no idea what side, but they're gonna persecute the, I don't know,
Fremen.
Yeah, let's say they're gonna persecute the Fremen, but the oh my gosh, I'm listening to my words. So they're gonna persecute the Fremen, but the other person was like, no, don't do that because they thrive in persecution. And I was definitely kind of like, it felt like a little
Jesus,
a sneak diss towards Christians because the movie is kind of based upon Islam and stuff. But it's so true because when you start to like hate on the other side and you start to get backlash for it, there's no middle ground. Yeah. You're either with it or you're not, and people will choose the better side, and hopefully the side that holds the truth, which is Jesus.
Yeah, and I think that is. I mean, there's lukewarm everywhere, but what's crazy is I think in Revelation. Now this is all speculation, okay? Warning. I think Revelation, when it's talking to the lukewarm church, when God is talking to, because He talks to all these different churches in all these different areas, and He's talking like, hey, this is your problem, this is how you gotta handle it, or else there's big consequences. And I think when He's talking to the lukewarm church, I really think, I take that one personally. I think that one is really our culture, our area, because we have the freedom to do all these things. We have the freedom for all this stuff. Freedom of speech, freedom to talk about whatever religion, believe in whatever we want, invest our money however we want, manifest destiny, all this stuff. Like, we can do whatever we want, but I think we lose so much reverence in that. I think we lose so much fear and awe of God to where everything is lukewarm and distilled. There's no hot or cold. There's no good versus bad. It's just like, ooh, we're at church. I think it would be funny if we put some strippers on the stage, and then Mark Driscoll says this thing. Because it's like, they have so much freedom and lenience. It's almost like having a parent who doesn't discipline at all. It's like, you can do whatever you want, but at the same time, it's like, but then a time will come where you either lived for it or you're going to die for it. And it's like, what side are you on? And the thing that, I'll just say it, but in Bible college, the biggest eye-opening about church wasn't my classes talking about it. It wasn't the books or the Bible reading. I mean, okay, the Bible reading was a pretty big eye-opening thing about understanding the church, but it was seeing it was having chapels on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and seeing all the people who were like, I want to be future pastors, I want to be future worship leaders, and they're on stage and they're doing this thing, and then they get off, and you can't even recognize them. Like if there were two different personalities, you know, they get up on stage like, God is so good, God is so loving, He's in this place, and then they get off stage and it's like a different day, and I see them at night and they're like, F this, F that, like just completely. And I'm not talking about swearing, I'm talking about like hatred in their heart. I'm talking about just a non-loving character. And not just a non-loving character, like there was other things of just like partying. A lot of them were partiers. And it's crazy because like, but I thought you loved Jesus. And you're like, are you two-facing me right now? Like it was crazy. And I wish I could have said it was a small demographic, but it wasn't. It was the majority. And I think, and not to blame them, I mean, they can have their own convictions, do their own things, but it really riles me up. But it's the culture, dude. And what they do is just breed more like them. And they just make more like them. Like people who maybe genuinely did want to become pastors, and they come and they all this stuff, they encounter these people and they're like, oh, all these guys are doing this. Oh, these people preach on Tuesday, but then freaking do all this stuff on Wednesday, like, or Tuesday night. You're like, oh, what is the real genuine part? And like when you're looking at that and you're seeing someone who preaches but then also parties in a bad way, because you can party and have a good time, but see somebody who preaches and then parties, and you're like, okay, what side of God do they follow their life with? Are they either hot or are they either cold? Every time you're going to say they're cold, because like you can't say you love God and do all these things. You can't say you've sacrificed all this stuff, but then just pick it up in secret